Hello and welcome to Crafting with the Desmond-Fish Public Library. Today I'm going to show you how to make a tunnel book, which is a card like this that you can lay flat, but then you can also stretch out and create the illusion of space or depth in your art. Now, to do this, you're going to need some paper. You're going to need something to measure with. I have my mat and my ruler, something to draw with, something to cut with, and a glue stick. And I'll take you through step by step how to do this. It's much simpler than it first looks. I'm going to show you how to do the accordion fold on the side, how to make your scenes, how to put it all together. And if you're someone who believes you don't have any artistic talent, you can also do this with pictures cut out from a magazine. You just need to pick 4 images, something for your foreground. I have my little grass here, background, I have some rolling hills, and 2 things to be in your midground. I've done a tree and I've done a little fox. So I am going to get my paper out, and I have made mine 7 by 5.5. And you don't have to make yours that size. I did it that way to make things easy for myself because I am using 11 by 14 paper, and I can just cut it into 4 pieces and have it come to these measurements. I'm also going to put some color on mine, so I also have some watercolor pencils with me, some water, and a paintbrush. Now a tip, if you ever decide to mix pen and watercolors, you should make sure that the pen you have says that it's waterproof ink. Otherwise, you're just going to make a mess and be really sad that everything suddenly blurs together. So I'm going to get my 2 sheets of 11 by 14 paper, and I will show you the first step. Okay, so here I have my paper on my cutting board. I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. So the first, I'm going to have to cut it in half, so I know that will be at 7 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to make myself a little mark so I don't forget that. And now, because I have this cutting board, instead of drawing a line and following it, I'm just going to line up my ruler so that it's on the inch mark at the top and at the bottom. So I know it's straight and I know it's 7 inches. I'm going to press down firmly so it doesn't move. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to press down firmly and smoothly and draw it towards me. Now sometimes if you're using a thicker paper, I'm using Bristol board, you might have to do it more than once to cut all the way through. Or you can give it a little bit of fold to encourage it. Now I'm going to cut those in half again, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. So I'm going to measure, because I don't have 1/2 inch marks on my grid here. And once I'm going to do that with both pieces of paper until I have 8 pieces of paper that are the same size. Okay, now with my 8 pieces of paper, I'm going to set 2 aside to become the sides. I'm going to put 1 to the side. That will become the backing. And then the other 5, I am going to cut into frames. Now I made mine 1 inch wide. So I'm just going to mark this off at inches, which was when it is really nice having a 1 inch grid board. So I have now drawn a 1-inch border all the way around. I'm going to do that on all of my pieces, all 5 of them, and then I am going to use my X-Acto knife and I am going to cut this out. And I will talk to you when I'm done that. Okay, so now that I have my 5 1-inch frames, I'm going to take one, and this is going to be the back, and the last 2 are going to become the sides. Now, in order to make the sides, what you need to do, and I recommend using a bone folder, is we are going to measure 1-inch increments all the way across this. And then I'm going to make a sharp crease at every 1 inch with my bone folder, and that will make it very evenly spaced since I'm measuring it, and it will make it fold really nice and crisp. So I'm going to place my ruler at 1 inch, I'm going to place my bone folder, and I'm going to press down. And I now have a crease that will make it very easy to fold. If you don't have a bone folder at home, what you can do instead is you can use a pair of scissors and just leave them closed and use this edge. And you can see I have my second crease right there. I prefer using my bone folder, but not everyone has one, so I wanted to show you what else you could use. So I'm going to go across, making 6 lines 1 inch apart. Now this last one I don't actually have to crease. This last one I'm just going to cut off, because we only need 6 inches, not 7. So now my paper is divided into 6 sections. It has a crease every inch, and you'll find it's really easy to fold. So I'm going to do an accordion fold. So I'm going to fold it back towards me, and then fold it forward, and fold it back, and fold it forward, and fold it back, until I have something that looks like this. And the nice thing about having used a bone folder or having scored it with your scissors is that it wants to fold naturally along the line you made, so you get nice, crisp, straight folds. So you are going to want to do this twice so that you have 2 of them, and these are going to be your edges, like this. So now the next step, and what for me personally takes the longest, is coming up with what on earth you're going to do for your foreground, 2 middle grounds, and your background. Now I'm going to do a color version of what I did in my example. So I know I need to make some grass, I need to make a fox, I need to make a tree, and I need to do some hills and sky in a background. And I decided, since I want to use watercolor pencils, that what I'm going to do is use watercolor paper. And that's also why I've chosen to make this one out of Bristol board, because it has a little more structural integrity and it will be heavy enough to support the watercolor paper. This one I just made out of drawing paper, all of the parts of it. So you don't have to use fancy papers if you don't want. And I'm going to show you my trick for doing quick, easy, and what I think are quite nice looking watercolor with watercolor pencil illustrations. Okay, so I have my watercolor paper and I have my frame, and I'm going to use my frame to see how big I need to make my grass. My watercolor paper, you notice, is a little bit smaller than this. As long as there's enough overlap to glue it on, I'll be fine. I'm using the paper a bit smaller because it's what I had, and I'd rather use that than cut up more. So I am going to trace the frame, and now I have the area in which I can draw. So what I like to do is take a waterproof black pen and make just sort of bold, simple lines. Sort of evenly up and down scribbles, making them a little uneven because I want it to look natural. Now I'm going to make this green. So I'm going to take my green watercolor pencil and I am going to color it in pretty lightly. I'm just going to put some pigment in there really quick. A little something like that. And now I'm going to get a brush wet, and as soon as I add water, the pigment starts to move like it's watercolor paint, but I already have it down where I want it. So I'm really just going along, adding water the whole way down. I end up with something like that, which I think looks quite nice. I'm not worrying about these drips at the bottom because it's going to sit behind a frame. So I'm going to do that for all of my pieces. So I'm going to take my next watercolor piece. Here we go. Here's my pile. Here's my pile. I am going to trace the frame that I have to work within. That one is not straight at all, but it is okay because I'm going to cut this out. I just need to have an edge that I can glue on. And even though it is okay, I know myself and I know it will drive me crazy, so I'm just going to quickly redo it straight. More like it. And then you've got a tree trunk. We're going to want some tree roots and some branches. The ends of the branches and trees fork, kind of like fractals. And then I'm going to do some lines to give a texture for bark. And now I want it to not be winter but spring, so I'm going to add some leaves. Quick drawing of a tree, and then I'm just going to throw down some pigment. I'm going to pick two browns that are close to each other. The darker one I'm going to put in areas that might be shadowed. inside of the branches. And then the rest I'm going to put down with the other brown. So that's pretty quick and scribbly. And as soon as I start to get it wet, it really kind of comes alive. Like that. Now I'm going to add pigment to the leaves. I'm going to draw a fox, I'm going to draw a background, and then I'm going to show you how you're going to cut out your elements and put everything together. Okay, I now have my foreground, background, and my two middle grounds. What I need to do is cut them out like I have in this one. So I'm not going to try and cut exactly along the black line because that would be too hard. I'm going to give myself a little bit of wiggle room around. The background I don't have to cut at all. I can just leave that one. It's fine. So I'm going to start and I'm going to cut along the pencil line and then around my outlines. So I have the first one and it's a little rough, but now that I've cut out this area, I can get in here with my scissors and make it a little nicer. Scissors, it's much easier to do curves than with the X-Acto knife. And then I'm going to do the middles in here. And now I have one of my middle grounds cut out, and I'm going to do that for my other middle ground and for my foreground. Okay, so now I have my pieces cut out. I have my background. I have my frames and my sides and my back. So I'm going to set aside one frame and one back for the very end, and that's just sort of to finish it and to cover some of the seams. So the next thing I'm going to do is attach my pieces to their frames. And to do this, I'm just going to sort of line it up until I am pleased with it. I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to put some glue down. And there I go, my background is now framed. Now for these pieces, I want to line up the edges like that. So that's how I'm going to glue this down. I'm going to put glue on all of it, except for the bit above the line, which is going to be sticking up out of my frame. Like that. Now you can notice that I didn't quite cut my watercolor paper at the behind far enough enough, but I can just trim that if I want to, or I can just leave it. So now I have my pieces that are going to make the sides that will hold it all together. So I'm going to trim up my pieces and then I'll show you the order in which to glue them to your sides. I am now satisfied with my pieces and how they are trimmed. So now I'm going to show you how to go about constructing it. Now, if you look at them, they sort of make this, they've got 1, 2, 3 peaks here and 2 peaks here. You want your 3 peaks facing out. So these are going to be my outsides, as opposed to being like that. And you start with the back, and the back is just glued right onto the back inch of these. now I have this. And now my next piece goes on the front side of this bend. This is on the back. I'm going to glue my next one right here. I might end up needing something stronger than a glue stick since I have watercolor paper going on here as well, but we'll see. I'm going to set this one down, and I'm going to fold over the glued side and press. And now my next two are glued to the front side here and the front side here. So I put the glue on first on both sides. I stack up my next one. And then I push down so that the glue edges meet. Now I do the last one, so I'm gluing on the front of these. And by the front I mean if this is going towards the back and this is going towards the front, and the fold's like this, this is towards the front, that edge of the fold is what I mean. And I can see that this glue is not really strong enough, I'm discovering, for Bristol board and watercolor paper. I may need to go and get something stronger. Or maybe not. Now you have two pieces left. And these are pieces you can put on just to give it a nice finished look, because right now I can see these bits here. So it's nice to attach a front frame and on the back attach a back piece. And that way from the back it looks nice and the front it looks nice. And the stiffer your paper is, the more it will like to stand up on its own. But there you go. There is my tunnel book. I hope you have lots of fun making your own, and I will see you next week.